button recording so that everybody could see. So let me quickly show you. I'm gonna share my screen with you, and you'll see, because I want to see creativity in your personal interpretation. Let me just get it, and you should be able to see my screen now. And last time it wasn't successful, but this time I'm able to get my website out. So you can see this is completely different from gender in China, but this is just a, for your reference. If for people wanted to make a website, you can do that online. It's free, Wix.com. And for me, what I did, the title was Rediscovering the Area of Study, Discovery. Discovery was the theme for English studies from 2015 to, I think in 2015 at least. If you see the button, I do have music. I created music. And this is my home, right? The home of my website. And then if you press that, Discovery, then that introduces what that one is, discovery, the theme, the term, the impact of discovery. And if you go text, and then you'll see different prescribed text. What are the prescribed text? And all written there. And you press resources, and I created 5 texts. With each, you get a different one. This is text 1, text 2, and so Journey to the West, and text 3. You can click here to read, to enlarge the screen, etc. And see, this is the link I built. This is about Ice Baby in Ice Age. And let me go back. Back to my website. And text 4 is another one. And click here to watch. This is a commercial advertisement called Discover China. If you click on that, that will link to a YouTube video, which is expired now anyway, because I haven't been updating my website for a long time. It was created in 2015. And here is text 5, an interview. Why do diets usually fail? If you click here, you can listen. This is a podcast, right, by ABC. And then this is text 5, right? And then you go back home. This is it. So this is just an idea to show you. You can create anything that you like. Yeah. Okay. And of course, you can do posters and everything. I'm pretty sure you know how to do that and make it creative. On the one hand, I want to see creativity. On the other hand, I want to see your ideas are unique, original, and creative. Okay. We all clear about it? But you don't have to do a website. This is just a reference for you, for people who, in case you're interested in doing that. Okay, and now let's get started for this week's lesson. Do you have any questions after you saw my website? Oh, good. No questions? Okay, did you like that? Okay, and let me get started for this week's lesson. This week, we are going to look at politics and women's movement. So before we get started, these are 4 questions for us to recap week 3 lesson. So first question, why did the one-child policy face strong resistance from peasants in rural household? Second question, when did China have its first case of gender discrimination lawsuit? We did that case study, remember? And third question, when Did the PRC government started to ban companies from asking women seeking jobs about their childbearing and marriage plans? This is a milestone. And the last question is, just simply, what is hukou system? Okay, now let's give you 5 minutes, and I'll check with people about your answers in 5 minutes. Yeah. Two minutes. One minute. Okay, now it's time. First question. Anybody? It's about the one-child policy. Why peasants in rural China were not happy about the one-child policy?
Maybe because in rural area, they prefer boys than girls. So if the first birth was a girl, they was unhappy about it.
Yeah, good, Joy Xiao. And other factors. That's one important factor that you mentioned, boy preference, a cultural preference. Yeah.
They need workforce.
I can't hear you. I think.
Can we?
Oh, Sam, yeah. Please speak louder.
Maybe they need a workforce.
Yes, correct. Yeah, they needed workforce. So, complete that sentence.
So boy is a good workforce, right?
Yeah, I know you understand that. If we just expand that a little bit, we could say under the household registration system, peasants' income relied on the number of workers in the family. So that's why peasant needed to bear children until they have a son. So workforce, they needed workforce because that is tied to economic production within the households. Okay, thank you, Sam. And second question, when did China have its first case of gender discrimination lawsuit? Just give me the year. I think there's in the chat box. Okay, Sam said 2012, correct. Yeah, good. And the third question, when? That's a progress.
It's 2019.
Good. Yeah, who is this?
Hi, it's Joy speaking.
Joy, yeah, thank you, Joy. And last question, hukou system. What is hukou, or household registration system? What is that? Hukou in Chinese, or household registration system in English. Just in your own words. Everybody knows, but it's hard to say, isn't it? Okay, basically, hukou system was established by the PRC government in the late 1950s. So the purpose of hukou system was to curb population mobility, so as to ensure social stability. So this is the rationale of hukou system. And under the system, the population of China was divided into two parts. One was agricultural population. The other one was non-agriculture, which is the urban population. And when we talk about agriculture population, whoever have agriculture hukou, they have the right to farm. And they have limited social benefits in comparison with the non-agricultural population. And the non-agricultural population are entitled to various kinds of social welfare, educational and employment opportunities, social entitlements, stipends, etc. So that's why the system is pretty problematic, despite the government keep reforming the hukou system. Because the main reason that the international community is criticizing hukou was because it created social stratification within the society. But hukou system is progressing. It is under reform. It's getting, it's getting better and better. And it is, but still, it did further reform. So that's about the hukou system. Try to summarize that by using your own words, so show your understanding about it. That's good. So in many China studies scholarship, hukou system as a strong institution is often discussed. So that's why we need to know that. When we're doing gender studies, we also need to know these some of the basic things about China. Yeah. So we understand how, the society is structured, etc., and the problems. And many of the problems as we discussed in last week's lecture and in your tutorials, could be traced to the structural problem. So what, causes the structural problem? For example, hukou system could be one. All of these are interconnected. Okay, now let's move on to today's topic. The outline here, part 1, we are going to look at women's participation in Chinese politics. Number 2, on women's movement. Number 3, we're going to do one activity. And you can see the picture here that shows women now account for a quarter of Congress delegates, but no woman has ever sat on the Politburo Standing Committee. Yeah, so when you see the triangle, the structure of the Chinese the Communist Party, then you will know there is very little women there participating in politics, especially the top layer. So part one. So women in politics. There are some glossaries that we need to know because I'm just going to call the glossaries rather than the whole name later on. So in the first part, women in politics, we are getting to know the glossaries first, and then we are looking at women's participation in Chinese politics from 1949 till now, and then the reasons of the underrepresentation of women in Chinese politics, and then women's political participation in global context. These are the four aspects we are going to look at. The first one, some glossaries. First one, CCP. Everybody knows when they say CCP or CPC, they're the same. So Chinese Communist Party or Communist Party of China. So when I'm talking about CCP or CPC, that means that. Then NPC means National People's Congress. So National People's Congress. This Congress has the power to legislate and to elect chief officers of the state. And then CPPCC. CPPCC is Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference, a little bit long. So this one is the political advisory body. And it has delegates of diverse backgrounds. They are from, different social groups. And these could include famous athletes like Yao Ming. You could see his picture in the very end. And this could also include entertainment celebrities. You could see Jackie Chan's face in the middle. And these also include political princelings and some of the business tycoons. So all of these people are among the more than 2,000 CPPCC delegates in China. Yeah. And we hear from the news often called Liang Hui. So what is that? Liang Hui is basically the national two meetings. And what is the national two meetings? It refers to both the CPPCC and the National Committee, okay, and the NPC. So basically the NPC and CPPCC, we call that National Liang Hui. Okay, and the next one is a CCCCP. CCCCP means the Central Committee of the Chinese Communist Party. This is the political body that comprises the top leaders of the CPC. It has the power to elect General Secretary. So General Secretary is the top leader of China. And it also has the power to elect the Politburo members and the Standing Committee, etc. So that's CCCCP, very powerful, body. And ACWF means All China Women's Federation. So we'll be using some of the terms later on. And about the power structure of the PRC, it is complicated. It's not easy. I'm going to show you a triangle which shows the hierarchy of the Chinese Communist Party. But before that, we can, take a very quick look at the video. It's short, starting from 1:45. 1:45.
Continues today. The power structure in the PRC can be confusing because it is in many ways different from the American power structure, and because how it works based on the Constitution and how it works actually in practice is very different. It is easiest to understand when starting from the grassroots. The public elects and appoints their township congresses. They then elect the township government. The same goes for the county congresses and governments. County congresses appoint the municipal congresses. They appoint the municipal governments as well as the provincial congress. This congress appoints the provincial government. This makes up the local governments and legislature. The provincial government also appoints the National People's Congress, or the NPC. NPC appoints a standing committee and therefore makes up the legislature of the government structure. NPC also appoints the Supreme People's Procuratorate and the Supreme People's Court, which makes up the judiciary structure. The NPC is also in charge of appointing the Premier, which is the head of the government. The Premier then nominates those in the State Council and the NPC officially appoints them. Along with the Standing Committee, these three parts make up the government structure. The NPC also elects the President. However, the President is a ceremonial office only. The real power lies within the Communist Party. At the bottom of the party sits the National Party Congress, who elects the Central Committee. They elect the Politburo, as well as the Politburo Standing Committee and the General Secretary. The General Secretary acts as the leader of the Communist Party. Members of the Politburo Standing Committee control nearly all of the Chinese government through the nomenclatura system. This system calls for the officials to directly manage those officials directly below them. And because the members of the Politburo Standing Committee control most of the top positions, including the NPC, the Premier, and the President. Although the Communist Party does not tolerate any competition for its political power, it does allow 8 smaller parties, which it controls.
So, okay, now let's have a look at the slide here. So let's have a look at the hierarchy of the Communist Party of China. Just know the video was quick, right? And even we look at that slowly, it's still very complicated. So what you need to know is just simply the triangle. So firstly, if we look at the party general secretary, let me use a pen to annotate this. So I'm gonna get rid of this bar here. So party general secretary, who is that? The party general secretary. Of course, it's C, right? Okay. And the Politburo Standing Committee, there are 7 members. 7 members. They are all males. All males. And Politburo, there are 25 members. Politburo. At the moment, they are all males, but there is one female. There's one female. All the rest are males. And the Central Committee has 200 plus members, etc., etc. But for these two, one will needs to be less than 67-year-old. Less than 67-year-old in order to be a member. So there is an age limit there. And you can now think women and men, they have different, that they retire at different age, right? So 67-year-old, that means more chances for males rather than for females, right? If you then look at the Central Committee here, women only account for less than 9%. So this symbol means women. Okay, yeah, women account for only 9%. And ethnic minorities is less than 11%. And you can see women and ethnic minorities, they are the minority, right, of the power structure. And the party congress here down the bottom is held every 5 years. Yeah, so every 5 years you will see there is a change. So this is basically the hierarchy of China's Communist Party. This shows you how it works. And if we go, I need to erase this. Okay, this is okay. So if we look at this screenshot here, this picture, you see this is the Congress meeting. right? And then can you see how many women are there? See if we can circle any women there. If you see any, you can annotate annotate this slide. Do you see any women there? We can see how many. Can anybody see any women there? Oh, I can see people typing. 8, 9. Okay, I guess if you see 8 or 9, that will be the maximum, right? And it's hard really to identify the number of women. And if I use my, I'm not going to use my pen again. It's around that, right? It's maximum 10, I would say, from here that you can see. I can see people trying to single out, women. I can see there's women in wheelchair, right? And different clothing we could see. But the key message here, the majority are men. It's quite obvious, right? And it's that's a very gendered structure in terms of the political structure in China, in the Communist Party. It's very, very gendered. You could see women have little voices that will, tell us, as the majority are men. And as said, this is the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, the 7 most powerful men in China, headed by Xi Jinping, the party general secretary. And this is the Politburo Standing Committee. And you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This is the 7 members of the Politburo Standing Committee. So the Politburo Standing Committee, remember, the most powerful people in China. And you can see there's no women. There's no women. And for the 25 members of the Politburo, as we mentioned, there were 2 women earlier, but now at the moment there is only 1, which is the lady down below. So this slide tells us the 2 earlier, the earlier ladies, they were Wu and Liu Yandong. So Wu now is retired. She was the former premier of the state council, etc. And Liu Yandong, the second one, the lady here in this slide, who is China's vice premier, member of the Politburo party until she get retired in 2017, so 3 years ago, right? And then Sun Chunlan, the only woman there in the Politburo. That means the other 24, they were all men. Okay, just, get to know that. And so as we talk about the party Politburo, standing committee, we know there are 7 most powerful men there, right? I'm not yet at this slide. I'm just wanting to, elaborate that a little bit. So only a handful of female leaders have ever served in the Politburo. So most were wives of top leaders, such as Jiang Qing, Mao's wife, and Ye Qun, Lin Biao's wife, and Deng Yingchao, Zhou Enlai's wife. Those were, only a handful of female leaders has ever served in the Politburo, but not the Politburo Standing Committee. Okay, and now it's Sun Chunlan, right? The first time, for the first time since the end of the Cultural Revolution, the current Politburo includes only 1 woman, Sun Chunlan, and earlier it was, 2 ladies, yeah. And so that's just get to know that. And now we're looking at this slide, women's representation in Chinese politics from 1949 to now. We are going to divide that into 4 parts. The first one is from 1949 to 1970. And the second one is from the opening up period to 1990s, mid-1990s. The third one from mid-1990s to 2000s, and then 2000s onwards. So the first period from 1949 to 1970. this time, you can see the PRC was funded in 1949, right? And the women began to participate in politics at national level, as China had this 1954 constitution, 宪法. This is very important. And so basically the constitution gave men and women equal rights. So at this period, the MPC and CPCC had a number of female representatives, especially during the Cultural Revolution. Remember, the Cultural Revolution, that period in week 1, we've talked about that, right? From 1966 to 1976. So pretty much men were like, you know, I mean, women were like men, right? There's no real difference between how women behave in comparison with men, and how women dress, or the way they talk. There was no real difference. And gender equality was a key feature during that time. And the Cultural Revolution could be dubbed as the golden age of women's involvement in politics. So this is worth knowing. And in 1970s to 1990s, that's after China launched the opening up and economic reform policy. At this time, women's political participation reached to its peak. So this is pretty remarkable. Yet it just suffered minor decline during the 1980s and early 1990s. But overall, you can see women's involvement in politics has been going up ever since the 1970s. And from mid-1990s to the 2000s, this is a turning point, really, another milestone. Because, think, in 1995, what happened? It's the 4th World Conference on Women. The UN 4th World Conference on Women was held in 1995. Ever since then, various women's development programs were developed, along with legal frameworks were introduced to support women's participation in politics. So the number of female involvement in politics regained momentum ever since the 1990s. And you can see this is basically pressure, right, from the international community. And as the international bodies, the UN, other countries were upholding women's rights, that gave China pressure. China was thinking, we're going to do the same. We can do equally good. We're going to develop programs and policies to motivate women to, be involved in politics. So this, with this pressure, with this force, women gained increased status as well, especially in terms of their political involvement. And from the new millennium till now, ACWF, All China Women's Federation, has developed different programs for women. And you can see it's been progressing in terms of women's involvement in politics. And so these programs developed by ACWF were all aimed to increase women's influence in local government. And in 2007, the percentage of female representatives in National People's Congress were about 22%. Yeah, so that's a mandated figure. So the state was saying the percentage of female representatives in the PRC has to be 22%. So you can see there is a quota imposed by the state. The state was saying there has to be a certain percentage of women getting involved in Chinese politics. It shouldn't be purely dominant by men. So therefore, you see, the mandated initiative prompt a lot of women to be involved in politics. And young women received a training in local elections and campaigning skills. They started to learn how to get involved in elections, and especially in rural China, women have never been participated in politics earlier on. I mean, the majority, but ever since 2007, it made this, made these women more active, getting involved in these matters, started to think at least to take part in political campaigns, etc. And in 2010, a third of village committee seats reserved for women. So you can see from top down at the national level to the bottom, the grassroots level at village level, women were all getting involved in Chinese politics because of the initiatives by the state government and the local government. So the point here is women has increased. Women's political participation has increased, and this is all state-led. The point here is women's involvement in Chinese politics is state-led. So this could be called state-led feminism, which is a very unique feature throughout Chinese history, which is different from gender in other countries. So remember that. And if we look at the laws, the legal frameworks, the regulations, and the major events that helped to promote women's political participation from 1950s to now, we can see in 1954 and 1982, China initially had this constitution in 1954, and then it revised that in 1982, along with other party documents. So, for example, in 1954, as I just briefly touched, in the constitution, it says all citizens of the PRC have the right to vote and stand for election. So women enjoy equal rights with men in all spheres of life. And you can see this is state-led, right? Because this is written in the Constitution. And in the 1982 Constitution, this one advanced the women's political rights by stating that the state trains and selects women cadres. So the state took the lead to select women leaders. Yeah, and also in this 1982 Constitution, it says the party should pay great attention to cultivate and select women cadres as well as minority cadres. So women and ethnic minorities were all, asked to be taken care of by the states. Yeah, so women's political inclusion became mandatory. And etc. So women started to get involved in this voting, political campaign, election process, and training, etc. This is, you can see, this is where changes started to occur. Yeah, and in 1992, if you look at that, China had its first law on protection of women's rights and interests. Yeah, so this is a law. This is another milestone. So this law states that the state should actively train and select female cadres, and the state organs, civil organizations, enterprises, institutions must adhere to the principle of gender equality in appointment of cadres and promote females as leaders. So you can see the state has been driving all these initiatives to help women, to get them involved in politics. Yeah. Despite, from top up to bottom, it's all dominated by men still, even though. And in 1995, we mentioned the UN Conference on Women. So that really created a change, a turning point for a subsequent increase of women's political participation. And then since the UN Conference, that's from 1995 onwards till 2000, and then 2001 to 2010, all these years, you can see how many years is that? Around 10, a decade. So this really, all of these programs help to, point out the importance of women's political participation, and also all of these programs helped to promote gender equity. So in 2010, And also in 2011 onwards to 2015, let me get the bar above. So All China Women's Federation, they developed programs aimed at improving laws and policies, etc. So it really helped women to, exert their influence in local government. And that led to the significant rise in the number of women being active in politics and public life, etc., etc. Workshops were running from, in different places in both urban and rural China, etc. So this is, some of the factual information we need to learn. And now I'm thinking to do a quiz. Let me do some quizzes with you. The first one, let me ask people, how many members are there in China's Politburo? Think about the triangle. How many members are there in China's Politburo? It's okay, you can type. I can monitor the chat box. Okay, 25. Correct, Steph. Well done. Second one, how many women have served in China's Politburo Standing Committee? Again, how many women have served in China's Politburo Standing Committee? Good. Annabelle, Steph, you're right, 0. And third question, how many women are there in China's Politburo at the moment? How many women are there in China's Politburo at the moment? Correct. Yeah, Jie, that's correct. Sam, Annabelle, yeah. Jiamin, yep. And next one, let's say, the next one is a true or false statement. You can just type true or false, T or F. I say 5 female Politburo members were retired from the 19th Party Congress due to age limitations. True or false? 5 female Politburo members were retired due to age limitations. True or false? Correct. You're all correct. Well done. Yeah, so it's false because there were just 2 women, right? Wu Yi and Liu Yandong retired, and now you have Sun Chunlan there as the only woman in China's Politburo. So that's why the statement was false. Okay, well done. And next one, let's move on to the next one. So before the slide, what I want to say is overall, you could see women are underrepresented, yeah, and they are disadvantaged in the male-dominated power structure in China. So the low percentage of women's involvement does not really suggest women's status in the country. I'm repeating this, okay? The low percentage of women's involvement in politics does not necessarily suggest a women's status in the country. What I want to say is you can see women's social status, political status has been increasing, right? And it's equal as men, but they still have a low percentage of political involvement. This is clear, right? I don't want you to get confused when we talk about these two. However, it shows women encounter glass ceiling in terms of political participation. So glass ceiling, I'm pretty sure some people know that, but not everybody knows what is glass ceiling. So glass ceiling, 玻璃天花板 in Chinese, is, or you call the glass ceiling effect, 玻璃天花板效应 is Cantor's theory, R. Cantor's theory. So in economics, that refers to the unseen yet unreachable barrier that keeps minorities and women from rising to the upper rungs of the corporate ladders, regardless of their qualifications or achievements. So this is a metaphor, you could see, and it refers to the obstacles hindering the advancement of women. And I'm pretty sure, there are many stories that we could tell about one encounters glass ceiling, even include me, at workplace, I do encounter glass ceiling as well. And for many of you who work and in a workplace, I'm pretty sure you had that similar experience as well. We don't have to share our stories, but let's just take a look at the video that explains, in simple terms, what is glass ceiling.
The phrase glass ceiling refers to an invisible barrier that prevents someone from achieving further success. It is most often used in the context of someone's age, gender, or ethnicity, keeping them from advancing to a certain point in a business, or when he or she cannot or will not be promoted to a higher level of position or power. Glass ceilings are most often observed in the workplace and are usually a barrier to achieving power and success equal to that of a more dominant population. An example would be a woman who has better skills, talent, and education than her male peers, but is obviously being passed over for promotions. The glass ceiling metaphor in the business world is a reference to an employee's rise up the ranks of an organization. In theory, nothing prevents a woman from being promoted, but women can see that the higher they are in the company, the more promotions, pay raises, and opportunities they should have. Instead of being able to achieve the same success as peers, those who encounter glass ceilings are stopped by invisible obstacles that prevent them from rising further. The frustrating thing about this kind of oppression is that it is covert and cannot be seen. Instead of being a tangible barrier that would be easy to identify, a glass ceiling in the workplace persists in very subtle ways. In the 1960s, racism and sexism in the workplace were common, frequent, and accepted. For example, even the classified ads listings for men's jobs and women's jobs were separate. However, by the 80s, people were beginning to see that such discrimination was not okay. It is unknown exactly who first used the term glass ceiling. However, this term was first printed in a 1984 book by Gay Bryant entitled The Working Woman Report, which examined the status of women in the workplace. A 1986 Wall Street Journal story popularized the term as well. This story also investigated the barriers women confronted at high levels of corporations. In 1991, the Federal Glass Ceiling Commission was established to gather information and study opportunities for and barriers to the advancement of women and minorities. Today, the phrase is often used in the media. When women or minorities have made gains or achieved some success in the workplace, this progress is sometimes referred to as cracking the glass ceiling.
Okay, so this is about glass ceiling, and the video also mentioned racism. In that regard, then I think for a lot of women, especially those who migrating from different countries, especially from Asia, they would also encounter bamboo ceiling. So both bamboo ceiling and glass ceiling will really, prohibit them from advancing to the higher position, etc. So this is all hidden, and you can't see, but it's there. And of course, for men, there are ceilings too, bamboo ceiling often, but for glass ceiling, it often refers to the barrier that encountered by women rather than men. Okay, now let's take a 5 minutes break, and then we'll proceed by talking about the underrepresentation, the reasons of underrepresentation of women in politics. So 5 minutes break. Make sure you stand up and walk around, do some stretches, which is important. I get stiff neck, very stiff neck the other day because I've been sitting at the desk for 2 hours without moving around, and this is not good. Yeah. Okay, see you in 5 minutes at a time.
The phrase glass
let's continue. It's 10 o'clock. And the reasons for women's underrepresentation in politics. So there are 6 reasons that I've summarized. Let's have a look at these together. It's not just a glass ceiling that prohibit women from going forward or upward. There are other entrenched factors. For example, the first one is the traditional cultural ideology in China and in many other Asian countries especially, that could account as the one reason for women's underrepresentation in politics. What I mean here is, it's the entrenched gendered attitudes toward men and women, and that will relate to gender role and gender role socialization here. So women's image, if you think, women's images are often conceived as lacking quality and lacking self-confidence, and they are, traditional and supposed to work inside the home, and they are seen as not natural public or political figures. So all of these views, entrenched gendered views, are reproduced and reinforced through gender socialization process, and such biased views, you could see, are reproduced every day by the media, by our peers, by our family, by the educational institution, etc. And these biased views are also internalized by the women leaders in the ACWF, the All Women China's Federation, or other governing bodies. And you can see these views are mirrored in the campaigns as well that aimed to enhance women's self-esteem and quality. Quality is known as 素质 in Chinese, 提高妇女素质. So if you have these already, pre-existing views about women, you're launching these campaigns, activities to improve the so-called women's 素质, women's quality. That means women are, predefined as not natural leaders, and they need improvement, etc. So the perception is a precondition there. And all of these would mask the institutional and political factors that shape the way that men and women enter politics. So this is one, right? Of course, there are political factors, right? And there are institutional weakness and loopholes in some of the legal documents that are, really masked by these campaigns. Because when you see these campaigns, the campaigns already say, look, women need improvement. So in a way, that hide the real problems, the institutional and political factors. That's what I mean. Second one is bias in the nomination and selection process. Especially for the leading positions in the party and state, it's usually we see everywhere is male dominated when you talk about the governing structure. And males also have closer network 关系 with the cadres. So that really really build a very thick glass ceiling for women to go up the ladder. The third point is policy deficiency. Policy deficiency. So in some policies, some documents, you can see the description of women's political sharing is very non-specific. For example, some documents would say there should be at least one woman in this committee, for example, in this governing committee. So what do you mean? There should be at least one. So should, that means does it suggest a mandatory, or is that just a suggestion? So if that's just a suggestion, then people could interpret that this is optional, doesn't have to. Okay, at least one woman. Okay, when people say at least one woman, they would say, okay, we'll just have one woman working in leadership. So at least that would be interpreted as just one. Some of these terms create ambivalence and will confuse people. Yeah, and will be interpreted differently by different leaders, cadres. The fourth point is different career trajectories of men and women. So women usually retire earlier than men. So that really hindered their political advancement, their promotion. Women retire earlier, right? And I think for here as well, it's universal. It's not just the China, right? And also, next one is women's overloaded home duties. We've talked about that earlier. So as women have a lot of housework to do, they do not have a lot of economic, that they lack of economic and time capitals. So in that regard, they can't really handle everything. That will hamper their political participation capacity as well. And but the thing is, women is no worse than men. Women could do equally, good as men, or it could be even better than men. But they are overloaded by these home duties. They don't have time for it, and that really, make people think they do not have the capacity to do it. And the next one is gendered understanding and knowledge efficacy when it comes to politics. So a survey in 2003 found that gender difference in different aspects of political culture understanding that shows whether, women pay enough attention to media reports, political knowledge, or interest in politics, or personal efficacy, etc. Whether, regardless, women do that or not, women are scored lower than men. So people, it's a common belief that women do not have the same amount of knowledge as their male counterparts when it comes to politics. This, I think, does have an element of truth. As you can see, you often see men talking about politics, and then you seldom hear women gossiping politics, right? But that doesn't suggest that women doesn't have the equal capacity as men to fulfill their political role. Okay, so next, as said, glass ceiling and underrepresentation of women in political participation is not just a China thing. It is universal. It is a universal problem. And we can, have a quick look at the video, and then I'll talk further about it. Stay cartoon.
Gender equality in politics. What does it mean? Do you know that only 23% of the world's politicians are women? The lack of female political leaders on the world stage is all too visible. You have to look no further than the 2017 family photo from the G20. Of the 36 people in the picture, only 4 were women. According to weforum.org, Rwanda is a surprise leader in female political participation. Its position at the top of the list of countries with the most female parliamentarians, 49 out of 80. The evidence of gender discrimination is rooted in history, tradition and culture. While the female sex constitutes slightly more than 50% of the population, only 14 of the total 200 governments, or 7%, are headed by women. Around the world, women are closing the gender gap in areas such as health and education, but significant gender inequality persists in politics. Democracy is not democratic without equality. While women in politics experience violence and intimidation, UN Women in 2016 identified 4 ways to increase female participation in government. First, setting numerical targets for women in leadership positions. Second, expanding and diversifying the pool of qualified and capable women able to run for election. Third, increasing awareness of the benefits that women in politics bring, and finally, encouraging support for them among governing institutions. And well, with more balanced societies, we are better able to gain peace and prosperity.
Okay, and I've put some links in Moodle. If we go to Moodle, and we'll see in week 4, and if you click on women in, let me see, women in politics world map. Let's check this one. And if you click on the link, so each week I'll put some references for you, and you'll see, okay, this is a map that shows women in politics in 2019. And if you make it bigger, and you could see it's color coded, and really that will give you an idea, that the level of women's participation in different countries. And for this one, let's say, for example, if we see women in top positions, the countries are ranked according to the percentage of women in ministerial positions, reflecting appointments up to 1st January. And you could see in the country the percentage of women's involvement in this ministerial position. Number 1 here, you could see, it's Spain, right? 64.7, that's over half. And let's see, China, where's China? Can anybody find China there? That's big, that's a lot details, but that gives you an idea, the level of women's participation in politics from a comparative point of view. And so you could see, here, right? China is number 73, right? This one is, the countries are ranked and color coded according to the percentage women in unicameral parliaments, or the lower house of parliament. So what surprised you here is on this hand, on the right hand, the rank, Rwanda, you have 61.3% of women staying in lower or single house. And whereas down below, China, comparatively speaking, is 24.9%. So some of the figures will surprise you. It did surprise me as well. So for your own personal interests, you can have a look at that later. And the other link I put in, let me see, what was that? Was 1, 2, 3, 4. Women in elite spaces. Okay, this is an article, you could read. It's an opinion piece by The Diplomat. You can read that too. And back to the slide. Okay. And back to the previous slide. So what I want to say now is what you could see is China in that red zone just now, right? It's about 24%, right, in that category. And you also see countries that have 60% and the countries have 0 seats for women in parliaments. So surprisingly, Rwanda, over 60%. And for some other countries, 0. So that does give you an idea, of where China situates in the world map as well. And if we look at if we compare China with some of the other countries, if we talk about women who hold top profile positions, and if we compare that, for example, compare China with Australia, then obviously in Australia there are more women working as state governors, ministers, executive level managers, and central government. And just like nowadays, you do see the Queensland governor, the health minister, etc. Many of them, these are women. And also in New Zealand, right? We see Jacinda. They're often in the news, especially during crisis time. And we do hear their voices a lot, but not in China. You don't see many women working at that level. If we talk about top profile positions, very little women are holding top profile positions in China. However, what I want to say is in terms of senior management role, that's another story. China is ahead of many developed countries, including Australia, the US, France, Germany, and Japan, etc. Many of the developed countries. China is ahead of many of these developed countries due to Chinese women's increasing control over wealth. For example, owning company stocks increased economic status, and the growing number of female entrepreneurs in China. This is what the developed countries do not really have, because China's economic growth is it's stunning, right? It's enormously quick. So that gives women a lot of economic opportunities to hold, to improve themselves, to get promoted, and to hold senior management roles. Yeah. So don't confuse top profile positions with senior management roles. Okay. And it's also worth noting that there is an increasing number of female politicians in Asia. I want to point that one out. Tsai Ing-wen, for example, and in Taiwan, and then Park Chung-hee in South Korea, and Yingluck, Thailand's first female prime minister, etc., and in the Philippines, etc. So more and more women we could see, they are holding top positions in Asia. You didn't see that prior, but this is a change that I just want to highlight. Yeah, and of course in Europe as well. But this is we're talking about China and also China's neighbors that we also need to know. Okay, now a question for us to discuss. Do you give more or less credit to female politicians, or you believe they are the same as male politicians, and why? I want you to have a think about that. I would like to put you to breakout groups. Yeah. And I noticed that in some breakout groups, people do not talk to each other. But I think, why not just turn on your camera and talk to each other? Get to know each other. It's important that you know your peers, and we create this community. So bear that question in mind. I'm going to put you in to different breakout groups, and please take initiatives to talk to each other. Yeah, we need that group discussion. I know online it's not that easy, but we try. Okay. I know some people don't like it, but we need to build this. It's important. This is good for the class, for the course. Okay. Let's you keep thinking about the question. I'm going to give you 5 minutes, quickly have a conversation, and then we'll come back. Okay. So we have 50 seats. We can have 10. mute myself. I think we're back to the main room, everybody. And are you all there? Let me check. I think you're all there. Should be. To do. No. Okay. So can you all hear me now? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, good. Thank you. And I noticed some people didn't join the breakout room. For those who joined the breakout room, did you press join? I just want to make sure everyone was put in a breakout room just now. Were you all in separate rooms just now? You were talking to each other? Were you in breakout room just now?
Yes.
Okay, good. Yeah. And I noticed a few people didn't. For those who joined, did you press join when you joined the breakout room, or automatically were put in the room? I just want to double check.
You have to push, you have to click the button before.
Okay, yeah. Great to know that, Annabella. Thanks very much. So for those who didn't join that, when we're doing discussion next time, can you press the button? Can you press join so that you can be in the right room? Just press that button. You'll be there. Okay. Now let's go back to the discussion question. What do people think? What is your opinion? Your own opinion. Do you give more or less credit to female politicians, or do you think men and women are the same? You know, it's just a politician. It's just a job. There's no gender difference there.
Hello, is my microphone working?
Yes, Steph. Yep.
For me, I think that female and male politicians are equal, and not one gender makes them better to be a politician. But I think if society is half male, half female, then the people elected to represent society should also represent that ratio. Like, it's not fair if we've got 50% of women in society, but no one making the politics for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. You think that, the percentage of political participation between men and women should go with the demographics, of men and women, the gender composition within the society. Okay, yeah, fair enough. Thank you, Steph. And as there is no gender difference in terms of, politicians, what do other people think, especially for those who hold different opinions? You give female politicians more credits and the reasons why. Just to gather your opinion. Let me check the chat box. I think some people perhaps... okay.
Maybe female politicians, they deserve more credit because we'll talk about women are ethnic minorities. So it's even harder for them to get the higher position. So in a certain way, maybe they should receive more credits.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because in your opinion, Joy, it's already difficult for women as they have this hidden glass ceiling there, and then they face gender bias and etc., especially in patriarchal society, right? In your opinion, therefore they deserve more credits in comparison with the male counterparts, given all those biased policies, etc., etc. Okay, that's a fair point too. Yeah, so it really depends on, what perspective that we're, taking, and then see which kind of societies etc., etc. So in China and in other countries in Asia, in comparison with those in democracies, perhaps women and men could be given different, could be seen, women could be given more credits, right, in terms of political ascending, etc. But in democracies, more in a more gender equal society, it might not be the case. Yeah. So it's just like an essay that you're writing. As long as you can provide some evidence to support your point of view, that will help. Yeah. Okay. Now let's move on to our second part, women's movement. I did not name that as feminist movement because there's no real large-scale feminist movement in China. Okay, and but there are feminist so-called campaigns, activities, from history to present. What I want to say is a few words before we talk about the campaign. Back. Okay. So what I want to say now is women's movement in China is quite different from Western feminism that purely focused on gender. So in other words, women's movement in China does not purely focus on gender. Yeah. So if we look at history, right, think about the first wave of feminism that occurred in let me ask you, I talked about that in week 1. When was the first wave of feminism in Chinese history? The first wave of feminism. Anybody can remember that? In week 1, we talked about that. Okay, I'll keep talking. Okay. So the first wave of feminism in China was what happened in the new cultural movement period from 1950s to 1925, so that 10-year period. So that is part of the anti-imperial, anti-feudal, and anti-Confucianism revolution led by male feminist champions intertwined with nationalism. If you remember Kang Youwei, if you remember, what's that called? The 女界中, the pamphlets. Who's the author? Even I forgot. Some of those male champions of female emancipation. We could recall that's the first wave of feminism that happened in China. It's not just a focus on gender, right? And if you think about the second wave of feminism in China that started from 1949 to 1970. That's since China, the PRC was established. So that is state-driven, that's government-led. So women were mobilized to work and building socialism and communism. Remember, the second week we talked about the topic, and also the Iron Girl campaigns, etc., etc. All of these, this is echoed by the slogan, the communist slogan, such as "Women hold up half the sky," right? 妇女顶起半边天. So women were the same as men. 男女都一样. So this is the second wave that happened from 1949 to 1970. If you look at the third wave of women's movement in China, that's from 1980s to 1990s. That's since the opening up and economic reform. So this is led by feminist writers and female academics who attempted to redefine feminism and advocating for gender equality between men and women. This is the week 3 topic that we covered, economics, urbanization. We read Lu Xing'er's essay. Some of the essays were written by the Sundown Youths, by women writers. Remember those women who experienced the campaigns, learning from peasants, and then they returned from countryside to urban China, and then they reflect on their experience and they wrote those feminist essays. So this is the third wave. If you look at the fourth wave of women's movement, that is from the new millennium to now. That's 2000s onwards. This is led by tech-savvy, young feminist activists focused on gender equality and combating sexual harassment and misconduct. And this is the thing we're going to cover right now. So this is the Me Too campaign, and the campaigns led by the Feminist Five, the so-called Feminist Five in China. And this period, we're going to talk about that in a minute, is with the help of social media to spread out all the messages. And as for ordinary women, you know, who are not necessarily feminists, we're also involved in this sharing information process and self-emancipation process by sharing their experiences of the, you know, under the Me Too movement, or you call the Rice Bunny movement in China. And these women all voice their anger and sexism, you know, the thing that they experienced, bad things on the internet and via different forms of social media, like, you know, WeChat, Weibo, and whatever, you know, social media formats. There are heaps, hundreds of social media forums in China. Those women share those stories on these platforms. And this was backlashed by the PRC government, who doesn't really tolerate activism. So this is the 4 lines that I've mapped out for you, the 4 waves of women's movement in China. There's no large-scale feminist movement, but feminist activities and campaigns are all there from history to now. So now let's have a look at the 4th wave of women's movement in China. So the Me Too campaign. I know some of you know about it, but you may not know all about it. So the Me Too campaign, what is that? It's a movement against the sexual harassment and assault. Me Too is the hashtag, right? The hashtag has gone viral since October 2017 to draw attention to sexual harassment and assault at workplace. So sexual harassment at workplace. Sexual harassment at workplace, what is that? So sexual harassment in workplace is an umbrella term that encompasses a range of unwanted behaviors. Just like, you know, the picture shows, somebody touches you on your shoulder, and, you know, it could be a form of harassment. And more images down below, you know, using their hand, using any object, and certain kind of, you know, touching and make you feel uncomfortable. This is all called sexual harassment. So this includes non-physical harassment as well. Do you know that? Including suggestive remarks and gestures or requests for sexual favors. So not necessarily physical, it could be non-physical as well. So physical harassment would include those things I just said. And so it can be perpetrated by anybody. It could be perpetrated by the manager or a colleague, a client. The perpetrator or the recipient may be male or female. So not necessarily the same gender as you, right? You know, not necessarily the opposite gender as you. It could be the same gender as you. So it does not need to occur inside the office. When we talk about workplace, it could occur anywhere. So back to the first slide, after we are clear about what is harassment at workplace. So what happened to the Me Too was in 2006, the phrase Me Too was used by the lady up there, the black lady called Tarana Burke. He is an African-American civil rights activist, and she promoted empowerment through empathy, this thing among women of color who have experienced sexual abuse. And this is what she did. So initially, it was her who promoted this Me Too. So that's for women of color, wanted to empower women of color. And what happened later was in 2017, and you can see that's after 10 years, right? That's pretty long. So in 2017, that phrase was popularized by an American actress down there. You can see Alyssa Milano. This lady popularized that phrase Me Too on Twitter. So you can see social media really is powerful. And back to 2006, back to the year 2006, social media wasn't that really popular, right? And that's why there is a big 11-year gap there. So in 2017, after Alisa shared the Me Too phrase on Twitter, and especially following the Harvey Weinstein scandal on Twitter, then this became popular. So Harvey Weinstein is the man there, and you can still see him, in the news. Now, if you watch the news, what happened to him. A lot of ladies accusing him sexually harassed, different ladies, etc. So Harvey, this guy, is an American film producer, and nearly 100 women accused him of rape, sexual assault, and sexual abuse. And Harvey was expelled from his position and was arrested as a result. So a lot of people were really happy to see him, been finally arrested. They want justice. And Milano, the actress, encouraged victims of sexual harassment to tweet about it. It's this lady who smiles, this lady who encouraged all victims of sexual harassment to tweet their experiences. And then many American celebrities echoed that and responded to her twist on Twitter. And this developed into a social media campaign where thousands of women were sharing their personal stories using the hashtag MeToo. This is the original story of the Me Too. And then if you are interested in watching the TED Talk, the presentation by Tarana Burke, the Black Lady, and you can click on that link and then have a look at it. And we're not watching that in the lecture. Just for your interest, you can click on the one below. So this one just shows after Weinstein, 71 men were accused of sexual misconduct and their fall from power. And you can see all of these, some of the faces are familiar, right? And we often see some of them in the news. So these are all the list, the men who are being accused of sexually harassed ladies, and then they fall off from their power, which is a good thing. So that means the Me Too movement really worked. Yeah. So these dozens of men were fired and publicly shamed. They were publicly shamed for their sexual misconduct. Yeah, all of them. And you can see the list will, keep going. Yeah. And be updated as the Me Too movement, it's still going at the moment. Back to the slide. And to the slide. So this is the tweet, the original tweet by Alisa Milano. She said, if you've been sexually harassed or assaulted, write Me Too as a reply to this tweet. And you can see, this is the original tweet by this lady. That's where the Me Too movement started originally. And also the New York Times gender editor commented, saying, in the weeks since the New York Times and the New Yorker first broke stories of the Hollywood producer Harvey Weinstein's decades-long abuse of women he worked with, the hashtag MeToo has exploded on social media as a vehicle for women to share their stories. So MeToo hashtag has become a vehicle on social media for women to share their stories and to empower women. And for perhaps the first time in history, powerful men are falling like dominoes and women are being believed. So this is a huge milestone. You can see the Me Too movement, why we're talking about the Me Too, the significance of the movement. So the Me Too movement has become something larger. It's a lens through which we view the world, a sense of blinders been taken off. Yeah, so that allows us to see things clearly. Yeah, allows us to see the dirty linens that people washed at home, or to allow women's voices to be heard. That's why the campaign is so important, significant. And now, ever since the Me Too movement in the U.S. and been expanded to other countries, it has also expanded to China. So what about it in China? So in 2018, Luo Qianqian, this girl, somebody will call her Luo Xixi. Anyway, so Luo Qianqian, a Chinese citizen, published a 3,000-word post on Weibo. She revealed a secret she had kept to herself for 12 years. So she was sexually harassed by her PhD supervisor, named Chen Xiaowu, the man pictured down there you can see. And Chen was a renowned professor at the Beihang University in Beijing. And this post that she posted received millions of views, and that's widely circulated. And the university sacked Chen Xiaowu in the very end. If you click on the link, I can click on that. Give it a few seconds. And let's see the post, the original post. So here, it's coming. So this post received millions of views and was widely circulated. And I don't think that's the original post. Anyway, I think it's been updated. Anyway, not this one. Anyway, you can check online if that's not here. And originally it's the on Weibo. You can still check that Luo's post, but that's written in Chinese. For those people who speak Chinese, you will be able to read that. And ever since, a wave of accusations started. Yeah, so a wave of accusations include many stories, and this is another example that you could see is this is a male PhD student, the guy there on top, called Yang Baode. He was found drowned in a river in Xi'an, and his girlfriend published an open letter on social media telling people the story that Yang committed suicide after years of abuse from his supervisor, who's this lady. The arrow pointed to this lady, Yang's doctoral supervision. Unbelievable. These are all academics, right? Top academics, PhD supervisors who harassed and their doctoral candidates, which is so disgusting, right? So this PhD student story was exposed by his girlfriend only after he died. It's very unfortunate. And this lady asked him to do a lot of things for her, like watering her plants, going shopping with her, and picking her up from a parking lot, etc. So that's not about the PhD thesis, right? It's basically using him as a personal assistant, which is not right. Yeah. And also there are other stories. Other stories include, WeChat open letter accusing rape by charity leaders. So in this Me Too movement in China, a woman posted an open letter on WeChat accusing the charity leader whom she worked with sexually harassed her 3 years ago. And the letter had gone viral online and encouraged other women to detail their similar experiences with charity leaders, television personalities, intellectuals, and other celebrities. And that also include this guy, Shi Xuecheng, one of China's leading religious figures. So, a monk. So, different in different in different fields, leaders in different fields were all accused of sexually harassed people, and many of them have apologized in public. Yeah, other stories. This is another open letter, and you can see people from the top down, the grassroots, the victims, they are empowering themselves by sharing the open letters, documenting their stories and their horrible experiences as a way to empower others, empower each other. So in this letter, in this particular example, this is Jiang Fengzhou, right? A writer in China, a well-known writer. She described how, was it Jiang Fengzhou, right? Yep. So she described how the journalist, which is the guy here, and you can see, she described how the journalist Zhang Wen raped her at his tea house after she got drunk, then threatened her to keep it secret via messages on phone. And Zhang Wen also bragged about his network in journalism circles, and he has had sexual intercourse with more than 100 girls, this nasty man. And most of whom were his interns or new recruits. So after that, many other women, including Jiang Fengzhou and other victims, also artists, journalists, also accused Zhang Wen of sexual assault. So when you expose your experience with one guy, you tend to hear a lot more. Others, got similar experiences with that same person, and that same person, many of them, they are celebrities. Shocking, right? And so the Me Too movement really inspired a lot of women. And here is another video that we can just quickly have a look. It shows the Me Too campaign really prompted women to speak out their own stories. Many women, they earlier they were very hesitant. They were not willing to share, but they when they see others sharing their stories, they started to share theirs. The link currently I can't get it work, but that's okay. That's not that important. The message that you got is women started to speak out their own stories on social media. And also in China during this campaign, students, university students, what they did was students and alumni from over 50 colleges, they signed an open petition demanding schools to develop mechanisms that prevent and deal with sexual harassment on campus. So many teachers also were involved in this process, signing the open letter calling for educational institutions to strengthen their regulations and put in reporting system for sexual harassment claims. So the open letter, you could see, I'm pretty sure there is an open letter here I put in here. This is one I'm going to show you. Headed, the letter was penned by Xiao Meili, a Chinese women's rights activist. Xiao Meili is the girl on the left. You can see her photo there, and she's from the Communication University of China in Beijing. So what she did was she detailed a plan to prevent sexual harassment on college campus, and with another 16 people signed on that. And in 2012, Xiao Meili and some other women's rights activists, they protested domestic violence by wearing a bloody wedding gown And you can see what's written there in Chinese. 爱不是暴力的借口. Love is not an excuse of domestic violence, and etc. etc. So they were just advocating for women's rights and highlighting domestic violence as a social problem. It's a social problem rather than a domestic problem. And also in 2013 to 14, these girls walked 1,400 miles to raise awareness of sexual abuse on college campuses, just to raise awareness of sexual harassment through different channels. And in 2015, they organized an armpit hair contest. So the pictures can be seen on the bottom right. So this is to redefine feminine beauty. So to them, there is no single standard of femininity or the so-called feminine beauty defined by males. They have their own interpretation. So this is just a performance, or you call behavior that show the feminist views on femininity. And this letter, you can certainly click on that and have a look if you like. I think my computer at the moment, it's not running so fast, but good, it's working. And this is, say, China must combat on-campus sexual harassment, an open letter by this little girl, Xiao Meili. Okay, and you can read what's documented there for your interest. This is not that long, but this is signed, you see, by 16 people down below, students and teachers, etc. So which worked really, And you need these kind of activities and campaigns to move things forward, to address issues, right? You're gonna have some leaders in this process. And next one is China's feminist. I think would learned what the Feminist 5 has done. And so these 5 ladies, they were detained by the Chinese authorities on charges of disturbing public order after they planned to hand out stickers on Beijing subways to protest against the sexual harassment on public transport. So that's what they did, and they were detained because of what they did. So the feminists, they were arrested right after the International Women's Day. And also during Chinese President Xi Jinping's preparations to co-host the UN Summit on Women's Rights as a celebration of the 20th anniversary of the 4th UN Conference on Women in Beijing, right? So it's at that time they were detained. Therefore, you got international bodies, communities, and powerful politicians to criticizing that. So like Hillary Clinton tweeted saying she hosting a meeting on women's rights at the UN while persecuting feminists, shameless. This is Hillary Clinton's tweet. And there are other tweets on social media, but of course these you can't really see in China. And these are all censored messages. And the Feminist 5, they were released due to pressure from the international community. And similar activities by other citizens were also cracked down by the Chinese authorities. But at this stage, I think what I want to say is when you see rising feminist activities and the growing need to campaign on social media, and you can see the government census stepped in and they deleted hundreds of social media posts supporting the Me Too campaign, and they blocked the relevant forums. And as potentially this could cause instability and threaten, because, you know, from the government points of view, these so-called, movement online could potentially threaten the political solidarity of China and cause social stability. That's why they got that reason to censor these information. And however, the thing is, the Me Too campaign and or other similar types of feminist campaigns, they kept going on despite the government's crackdown. There's power and there's counterpower. Yeah. And when sometimes, when you see the government thought they could, crashing the Feminist Five or other feminist activities in China, and they think China would be able to suppress these large-scale feminist movements. However, it has the opposite effect if you think closer. It has galvanized the feminist communities in China in a way. And more young women were attracted to the idea of feminism, ironically. So this is a point, brought forward by a feminist writer and a scholar whose name is Letta Hong Fincher, and you can read some of her opinion pieces or work online. Some of her opinions, I think, does make sense, but not all the opinions make sense to me, because some of the opinions are pretty extreme. But I do believe what she, pointed that on the one hand, the government was trying to suppress these campaigns and the so-called feminist movements. On the other hand, feminism has attracted a lot of, more and more people. This idea has raised more social awareness. That kind of, created the opposite effect as more people getting involved in this feminist movement. Yeah. So this is the interesting part of that. And how do people circumvent censorship? They use the homophone hashtag #RiceBunny to replace the Me Too to circumvent censorship. So #RiceBunny, rice means me, bunny means rabbit. So #RiceBunny, me too. This is a homophone, so that's why that's called a #RiceBunny. And this hashtag has been reposted by netizens to, carry out this campaign, keep the campaign going, and okay. So this is about the Me Too movement in China. So the Me Too the #RiceBunny campaign has, been reposted by netizens to keep the campaign going. It has, you can see it's getting smart, right? It's getting more and more powerful, and it tells the government the younger generation of women and men will not be silenced, right? The more you crack down on us, the more smarter we'll become, and the more strategic we'll be, and we'll carry on our cause. So this is, what you see at the moment. Yeah. And now let's give you another 5 minutes break. And then after we come back, we'll be talking about the Me Too campaign, and I will do some work on that. So I'll see you in 5 minutes. Again, stand up and walk around, stretch your body before we continue.
If you manage a team, you have to try Monday.com. Monday.com is a platform to track everything your team is working on.
So,
If you manage a team, you have to try Monday.com. Monday.com is a platform to track everything your team is working on. We use it for...
So I think everybody's back now. Just now I played a song. I didn't play that just for fun for myself. I played it to you. Let me start my video. Okay. Yeah, the song. I actually want to do a poll, but I'm not sure if people, everybody has listened to that. I'll play that song again. And now I'm pretty sure everyone is here. Pay attention to the lyrics. Okay, this is not about Me Too. We're going to talk about Me Too after the song. Okay, we're taking a break. And I just want to, find out what people think about the song. Okay, let me just play that again. So what do people think about this song? Any comments? Sad. I can see Qijia. It's saying it's sad. Why, Qijia? Why do you think the song is sad? Let's analyze that from a gender perspective. Tell us why it is sad. IDK. You can turn on the mic and get us here. I by typing it's not really easy, and I don't understand what's IDK. Annabella says, I love the song, but it does sound kind of sexist. Okay, reasons why it is sexist. Tell us. Annabelle?
Well, I think it's kind of like expecting like the girl to like wait for you after like you're off to chase your dreams and whatever. But
yeah,
I think it's more like the guy expressing his gratitude to the girl. So like I appreciate that part.
Sure, yeah. And what is the guy's gratitude? The guy's attitude you mentioned toward the girl.
I mean gratitude, like
gratitude. Oh, okay. Appreciation. You mean? Yeah. Okay. Sure. Yeah. Correct. I believe that's sexist too. Yeah. And basically, what's the story? You can see is that the video we can see is actually perpetuating traditional gender stereotypes. Why? Because you can see the girl, what does she do? She was supporting her boyfriend's dream of becoming a professional photographer by working really hard at a milk tea shop. Did you all get that story? If you get that story, and you might think, from a feminist point of view, this is sexist. The lyrics of the song could be problematic. Feminists wouldn't like the lyrics. Right? And these, on the other hand, we could see, if you do some research online just quickly, you don't have to do it now. I mean, you could see criticism there online, just saying, highlighting. I mean, all of these criticism really, suggest a growing feminist movement in China. It's just a feminist, movement in Chinese society, which is traditional patriarchal, right? The Chinese society has always been patriarchal, but what we see now is growing feminist, consciousness or feminist reactions toward sexist products such as this song, popular culture, etc. So this is a progress, right? This is a change, and this is something worth pointing out. And this could be a good gender case study as well, for some people wanting to do any concrete gender case study. Okay, and the message here that I want everybody to know is you do pay attention to everything around you. Popular songs, cartoons, films, and any kind of cultural products. And, analyze those from a gender perspective. And you put gender, it exists everywhere. And, think we're talking about gender on Tuesday, every day, every week, and then you apply that, right? You apply that to your life. So this is important, right? This is how we really learned, what gender is, and be able to apply the concept to analyze everything around you. Yeah. And I can see there is a message here. Steph says, I think it would be good if her boyfriend left for the school. Then, when she's alone, she might finally find out her own interests. Yeah. Let's see. We don't know the story, afterwards. Things might get better. But the song itself, it's all played from the boy's perspective, the boyfriend's perspective. So we can see, and this is a bit of problematic there in terms of gendered representation. Okay, and I do want to, hear people have some opinions, regardless of what you are contributing your ideas. That is, what I want to see. Okay, now we are moving to the Me Too campaign. And let's just finish this song and then back to the slide here. So we are having a task here. The task is we are going to do a discussion first. And first one, I want to get your individual response on this to you. We're talking about the Me Too campaign now, okay? How does the Me Too campaign shape your understanding about sexual harassment or sexual assault? Does that, change your initial thoughts about sexual harassment? Does it help you to learn more about that and pay more attention to? Or any stories that you want to share? First one. As said, the movement is significant. Originally from the US, expanded to many other countries, and then China. So it's a worldwide phenomenon now. It's not just in a single country. So does that shape your understanding about sexual harassment at all? Does it help? Or do people have any comments, opinions regarding the Me Too campaign? It could be just focusing on China. And think about the questions below. If you don't, respond to the first one, I'm pretty sure the Me Too campaign will shape people's understanding about this phenomenon. What I want you to do is you write a short piece. We don't have to do that via breakout group now, but we can do that as an individual task. I want you to think about the questions here. Do you think that talking about these issues, sexual harassment, etc., can actually spur change, and why or why not? And do you think the hashtag #MeToo campaign has prompted a turning point in the ways that people talk about and react to sexual misconduct? Or do you think things will simply return to the way they have been after time passes? Say, after 2 years, 3 years, things will get back to normal. And what makes you think so? And in your opinion, and how has Me Too campaign shaped gender relations in China? Any impact or significance that you could articulate when we talk about the Me Too campaign? So this is the question. So I'm going to create a forum discussion in Moodle, and I want you to write a piece, a quick reflection based on what we have learned in this lesson, and then you can post that to the Moodle forum. Now is thinking time, and let's just do that as an individual group, as an individual task. Yeah. So think, and then you can, feel free to express your opinions. Well, we're all here. Okay. So I'm going to go to Moodle and create that forum discussion, and then I'll put the task there, and I'll expect your response there. It doesn't have to be long. It's just 250 words. Just a, short, very short opinion, several lines, that would do. Or discussion forums here. I can add a new topic. I can say the hashtag #MeToo campaign or Rice Bunny campaign. Rice Bunny campaign. The questions you can see on this slide. You can use these questions as your reference. Yeah. So the post was successfully added. So simply by replying to my post, I can see yours. Yeah. Let's get this task done within 10 minutes. Okay. And feel free to chat with me and with all of us as one big group anytime. You should be able to see now in Moodle my post, the #MeToo campaign. And then we'll see people's post there. And then we'll discuss that together, especially the impact of the #MeToo campaign in China. You don't have to address the questions one by one. You can just write a, paragraph summarizing your opinion on this Me Too campaign. Especially we, see that from a gender perspective and the impact on gender relations, etc., in China. And feel free to ask any questions that you may have. Yeah, try to get it done within 7 minutes. Yeah, another 7 minutes. And I've received, email. I think one email from people asking me about the self-reflection, the critical reflection that they could do, asking me whether, focusing on everything or focus on one. And I replied, it's up to you. You can choose to focus on one or more. And I provided you with a structure. Yeah. And for example, today's, you can certainly reflect on the Me Too movement and the Red Bunny movement in China in terms of, gender relations, etc. What have you learned? What does that suggest? The impact of that. We're just doing some practice, and this is related to one of the assessment. I even wanted to do the self-reflection, rather than the essay. This is the final assessment. And China, by the way, doesn't really, have an anti-harassment law at the moment, and implementing that law perhaps will take time. This is similar to the process of implementing anti-domestic violence law, and which is, pretty time consuming. And anti-domestic violence law was, in 2016 that we saw that. And that took a decade to reach there. So for the anti-harassment law, we'll need to wait and see. When will that come? But the civil code, will touch a little bit on that, but I don't think that will expand further on the anti-harassment clauses, etc. We need a separate law on that. China. Okay, I started to, see people posting that. We can all have a look at what's available there, which is great. So let me see the first one. Denby? Okay, saying for myself, because the campaign initiated while I was in my teens is never really exposed to the reality of sexual harassment in the workplace. It does spur a change because spreading awareness, allowing others to know that such an occurrence is not okay. Can encourage people to report such misconduct, which often in the past has been brushed under the rug. Okay, yeah. Although the culture is still not completely perfect, where people are sometimes condemned for speaking out against their abuser in higher positions, I believe the campaign has made it a less taboo. Yes, correct. I believe that the Me Too movement has shaped gender relations in China, and that people will be more inclined to address this abuse of power on women in society. That's good. Yeah, and you can expand on that. How has gender relations in China has been shaped by the movement exactly? Expand on that. Well done. And Zongze, the overall success and huge response the Me Too movement has gained and elicited have revealed the fact that there are substantial amount of sexual violence survivors out there. Correct? Yeah. And in the world, through sharing the common experiences, victims of sexual harassment were able to inform the people about how shockingly common sexual harassment cases are. Therefore, the Me Too movement has lowered the society's tolerance towards sexual misconduct. Yes, which could in turn speed up the legislation process. Yeah, hopefully that ensures the rights and mental physical health of women all around the world. Good that you touched on the mental physical health of women. And on the other hand, by sharing the common experiences using the hashtag, victims of sexual harassment are able to communicate with each other. Correct. They are forming a network. Good that you saw that. This is a network that people formed on social media. And that's how women are empowered in that process. And okay, well, I'll continue. And comfort each other, which is extremely beneficial for rebuilding their lives and regain their confidence to advance the society towards an environment that it's not filled with sexual crimes. Okay, yeah, positive. Yeah, so very good. And let me see if there are more posts coming. Good, there are more. Let's just read that. I believe people are still writing, and when I'm reading that, I think I'm interrupting you. I'll read that. So yeah, you think, well, as time gone, without the campaign, people in the next generation may forget this issue gradually, possible. So this issue should be solved by law and formal regulations. Exactly, yeah. And maybe need to set a specific institution to solve these kind of issues. The specific institution. We do have, China does have NGOs helping with this cause, and a lot of people are getting involved in this, volunteering to help women. And for we need governing institutions, the government bodies to do this, getting involved in this. As well, just dedicated to sexual harassment, not just the shelters, right? So let the sufferers always have a formal and powerful way to protect themselves and to protect the gender equality. Of course, the Me Too let people rethink and reflect the gender relationship and sexual harassment issues through the media and campaign. Maybe let more person think about these issues more carefully and deeply. Start from themselves. Yeah, this kind of, we see the feminist movement coming from bottom up, and this is a key role played by this Me Too movement, right? And also, I think this campaign will stimulate more other campaigns, which like this, correct? It will, other feminist campaigns, similar and different ones, and this will form, this it could ignite a bigger wave, right? It's already a bigger wave, yeah? And this will form a good gender equality. Okay, I understand what you mean. This is like a starting point, right? See how good? And about talking about issues such as sexual harassment definitely can spur change. In older China, it used to be a taboo. Or, in older China, people may not know what is sexual harassment. What is that thing? Nobody knows. And it used to be a taboo, and it always took on a victim-blaming tone when talking about it. Women often feel ostracized, belittled, as it was hard for them to seek justice when they are abused. So the movement has definitely promoted a turning point in the ways people react to sexual misconduct. They start pointing their fingers to the perpetrators. It's very empowering for women to tell their stories too. Okay, good. Yeah, and I do want to, see people also see the flip side of that. From what I read from now, it's all the positive side. If you could also, just treating this as a short essay training, and I do want to see people also explore the flip side of that. Yeah, and not always the positive side. Yeah, and when you do the essay or any kind of critical writing for gender studies or for other subjects, do make sure you present different perspectives, discussing, analyzing the chosen topic. And meanwhile, explore the different aspects, different sides of the story. Yeah, and I will read your posts. I will see who did the post today. This will count in as your class contribution today. And so do make sure you post your individual piece. Either that's a few lines, or either that's 2 or 3 paragraphs. Do that. And if you haven't finished now, it's okay. You can do that after class. So now we can just stop doing this exercise, and I'll leave the rest of time getting people to ask any questions that you may have about today's lessons, or any of the assessments we've done or we are going to do. Yeah, and then I'll address that issues in class. Yeah, to make it clear to everybody. In case you have any questions or concerns, feel free to talk to me, talk to us. All good? Really? No questions? Think if you have any questions. Yeah. So if you have any questions, do let me know. I'm still here, right? And I can wait. Yeah. If you have finished the Me Too campaign post, and then you do not have any questions, feel free to take a break now, and feel free to call it a day and be prepared for your tutorial today. But if you do, feel free to stay. Yeah.